Eli Drinkwitz's old calling card of high school recruiting looks like something he is throwing back into the deck.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And now that the Missouri baseball season is mercifully over, I do have to at least ask the question, explore the possibility, if Sam Horn leaves for the MLB Draft this summer. I have to at least explore that possibility. Before we start the program, real quickly, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It's truly as simple as that. But you know what? When it comes to Mizzou football and high school recruiting, well, maybe it's not quite as simple, at least the calculation on what we should believe right now. Because, well, after Christian Cantwell's son, Jackson Cantwell, not only decided to go to Miami, has committed to the Hurricanes, well, Missouri didn't even make the Final Four for the Legacy Tigers services. But I have to say, number one, better there than Georgia. I'm glad that Jackson Cantwell, I should say, I'm glad that he did not stay in the Southeastern Conference. So +1 there. But I will say it's tough to hate on him for his choice. And I will say I was a little bit amused. It seems like athletes go out of their way when they make a decent amount of money to tell you that, hey, guess what? Don't you think for 1 second that it was about the money. Okay, cool. Everybody says that. But I think we all know the truth here. If I were a 17-year-old kid, as I once was, yes, nobody was recruiting me to play at the University of Miami. But at that point in my life, like I'm assuming Jackson Cantwell himself, well, you haven't made a whole lot of money. You're telling me you're turning down a reported $2 million in NIL money out there. Now, the Cantwells went out there to poo-poo that report by Peter Nakos out there at On3, the $2 million number. Whatever the number actually was, I'm sure it was significant. And, you know, going to any of those schools that were in his top four, whether it was Georgia, Oregon, Miami, whatever it might be, I'm sure all of those places would be fun places to go to school for 4 years. I'm sure he's going to get really good offensive line coaching at any of those places, and some people think that maybe the best offensive line coaching he might get is at the University of Miami. So I'm not saying it's all NIL, but let's be realistic here. Some of it was NIL, and I had some listeners, including Mizzou Mike 03, one of my everydayers out there, say that, hey, he's happy for Jackson Cantwell. But at the same time, as a hardcore Missouri fan, Mike is really happy that Missouri is not spending $2 million on a high school player. And I think he really might have a point here, especially when, well, true freshmen, especially on the offensive line, never play very much for the most part. I would say 98% of the time, even the top five, type of prospects. Maybe Cantwell very much could be the exception to the rule there. But for the most part, he really is that good of a prospect from everything I'm told. But again, for next season, and Missouri wants to be really 2026, Missouri 25 and 26. Missouri really wants to be good. They obviously want to compete for a playoff spot this season and the coming year when the $200 million addition plus $200 million plus price tag there, the addition to Faurot Field there on the north side of the stadium. Obviously, Missouri wants all of this to come to fruition in winning immediately. Not necessarily, oh, well, we hope our redshirt freshman offensive lineman is ready to compete for what, the second string possibly? You understand what I'm saying here. Is that money better spent on a player in the transfer portal, or more likely multiple players for that price tag, multiple players Again, Bo Prabula, the presumptive starting quarterback here at Missouri, got about a $1.5 million price tag. Well, if he's indeed your starting quarterback next season and he's effective and significantly more effective than whatever else you may have had on the roster, well, obviously that is a better use of resources in the short term than spending it on just about any high school recruit that I could imagine. So what I think we're seeing here, because I think a lot of Missouri fans understandably getting a little bit concerned that Eli Drinkwitz, well, until the last couple seasons where Missouri's finally cashed in, won some ball games, 10+ each of the last 2 seasons, a lot of what Drinkwitz and the administration was selling to Missouri fans was hope, and a lot of that hope was based on unprecedented high school recruiting. And what we've seen here is that, in fact, a lot of those highly ranked high school players, obviously there's exceptions, guys like Luther Burden III, of course, being a notable one. Well, a lot of those guys don't necessarily pan out, and it seems like the hit rate, especially in the short term, in the immediate term, well, the transfer portal, you get a lot more bang for your buck, quite simply. And in a world where there is no penalty for transferring each and every year, where in other words, you can basically reset huge portions of your roster each offseason if you indeed have that war chest of NIL money. Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think Missouri is being very aggressive here. And what you've seen here is that, well, Jackson Cantwell, a guy that a few months ago, it was sounding like it was going to be a Missouri-Georgia race. Well, it seems like some teams are willing to spend more and get more aggressive right now in the high school ranks, where Missouri seems like they're tightening their belt specifically on the high school ranks to maybe focus on the portal. And quite honestly, I think this is the right move. I really do. While it's disappointing to see guys like Anthony Kennedy decommit, guys like DeMonte Timms decommit, and now Missouri left with a lone high school prospect for 2026 right now, the quarterback Gavin Sidwar. Well, that isn't encouraging on paper, and yet I think as Missouri fans, we just have to realize that the Tigers are being unconventional here, but they're being very aggressive too, and that's the part that I like. Unconventional plus aggressive. I think while Missouri obviously is an SEC team that has a lot more money than most of the teams in the country, they're still competing with teams like Georgia and Ohio State and Oregon at times for recruits, and, well, that means you got to be more creative and get as much bang for your buck as possible. Those teams with bigger war chests, well, they can afford some more misses. So bottom line here, once again, I applaud this strategy by Missouri, this shift in focus. I think it's something that is necessary, and while painful to see a guy like Jackson Cantwell get away, I think it's just part of the price of doing business right now. Now, I brought up Bo Prabula earlier as your odds-on favorite to be your Missouri starting quarterback this fall. Well, lots of fans would say, hey, what about Sam Horn? Well, Sam's baseball season, along with the Tigers season in general, ended this morning. Sam threw 3 innings this morning, and the thought occurred to me, for all the talk of Sam's football acumen and his chances for being the Missouri starting quarterback, I think there's at least a chance that he might skip this season of football. Let's at least get into the odds of that coming up here in just a little bit. But hey, speaking of odds, let's talk about FanDuel, because the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night, man, it's just great action, isn't it? And whether it's the game-winning shot or predicting a breakout player, really, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And I have to apologize to my friends at FanDuel, by the way. I was saying that the futures these days, not a lot of value. Well, odds to win the NBA title before the season, before the playoffs even started. Heck, the Pacers were 28-1, Minnesota was 20-1, if you were in on that, well, that was some pretty good value. But get in on your next opportunity at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And again, if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. So make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So bottom line here, I do expect Sam Horn to be on the Missouri football roster this fall, but considering how well thought of he still is, by the way, as a Major League Baseball pitching prospect, well, let's at least break down the possibilities here, because recently Kylie McDaniel over at ESPN.com, by the way, had a mock draft for this summer's coming up pretty soon, by the way, the MLB Draft here this summer, had Horn going 94th overall. So, you know, a early third-round pick, well, actually late third-round pick kind of thing there. That's a decent signing bonus. Decent by Major League Baseball draft standards. Again, 94th in 2024, so just last season, was about $863,000. That was your signing bonus. So just shy of $1 million there. Remember, Sam Horn does make NIL money, I would say 6 figures plus to be certain. He has for years here at Missouri. I think that's a pretty open secret here. So that is pretty competitive here. But what if Horn goes at the back end of the first round? See, of course, the MLB Draft can be highly unpredictable. So what if he goes in, say, the 30th overall? Well, that was about $3 million in terms of a signing bonus last season. So that would be a bit of a different calculation. So Missouri fans will definitely want to watch the Major League Baseball Draft this summer, without a doubt, because Horn could have an interesting decision there on his hands. But again, I think he would probably have to get up higher than 94th, let's say, where the ESPN mock has him. And quite simply, I just don't know that for all of the upside that Horn's, talented right arm has shown here in his short time at Missouri. The bottom line is he threw 10 innings this season. I believe 10 2/3 innings, including this morning in Missouri's finale against Alabama in the SEC tournament. 3 innings, 5 walks, by the way, 2 strikeouts, no runs given up. So 57 pitches, 30 for strikes. Again, all of these numbers, his very short time actually on a college mound, just tells me he's much more of a developmental prospect, a high upside prospect, indeed that he is. I just think that Major League teams are probably going to want to see more from a guy that they're going to invest multi-million dollars of signing bonus in. Maybe around $1 million. Could Horn get that? Absolutely. I just think that though, then the NIL, well, that's where Missouri is actually a little bit more competitive than, well, obviously you would be in the past, at least from a legal perspective, wink, wink. So that is the interesting dynamic that's at play here in this new world that we all live in college sports. That is, hey, the year-to-year thing, see how much money you can get, all that type of deal. Well, suddenly, playing minor league baseball, for example, doesn't look quite as attractive as it did maybe a few years ago. And I mentioned the decommitment of 4-star defensive lineman Anthony Kennedy Jr., by the way. And one of the reasons for that, well, it was probably because Missouri Tigers defensive line coach Al Davis, surprisingly resigned from his position for, I believe, what was described as personal reasons. So obviously, whatever's going on there with Coach Davis, best wishes out to him. And especially because this is a real blow, I think, for the Mizzou football team. I think Coach Davis had done a tremendous job of developing and identifying interior defensive line talent during his time at Missouri. So that is not a position coach that, in my opinion, will be an easy one to replace. So obviously, best wishes out to Coach Davis. Maybe he can get back to Missouri someday, that type of deal. But regardless, There's a lot of more important things out there than football. So whatever's going on in his life, again, best wishes to Coach Davis. And you know what? Speaking of my friends over at FanDuel, it's really never too early to start talking about SEC win totals, especially when it makes, well, one of my points. And one thing I've been talking about this offseason, I think this is going to be one of the most unpredictable seasons of college football, and specifically SEC football, we've seen in years. And when you look at, well, your over-unders here, as I'm sharing here on your screen for those of you watching on YouTube, well, you've got Texas, Alabama, and Georgia all at 9.5 are their projections. Our Missouri Tigers at 7.5. But really the point here is that you've got from 7.5 to 9.5. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams, including Missouri, South Carolina, Texas A&M, Auburn. I'm not even mentioning Florida and Oklahoma here, who just have absolutely brutal schedules, but a lot of people think that those two teams could take a step forward in 2025. I just think you look at all of that, it is a jumbled mess. Who can figure all of this out? My perspective is, listen, I think those three at the top are probably correct. I think if I were going to give somebody maybe give somebody an actual full number, maybe it would be the Crimson Tide. I think I might dock them a half a point and give them a 9. I'll give you a push if you get 9 on Alabama. But I think Texas deserves to be up there. Certainly Georgia, to me, should be probably the favorite to win the league. I think I'm maybe slightly out on a limb there. It seems like the conventional wisdom has most with Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns winning the league. But even as good as I think Arch Manning is and will be, a lot of question marks for the Longhorns. Hey, Missouri's got a couple of offensive tackles they need to replace. Texas has 4 offensive linemen that it needs to replace. I just think that there's a lot of elements of unpredictability here. I could easily see Oklahoma being better than everybody expects. I could see Auburn being terrible this season. I could see Ole Miss going a whole bunch of different directions. LSU, I think really Ole Miss and LSU to me probably have the widest range of outcomes. But hey, I think the Missouri Tigers have a wide range of possible outcomes this season as well. So no matter what you think about any of these numbers, to me what it says, this is going to be, if you like unpredictable and exciting football, well, we're looking for a good one in 2025 this fall. And since I brought up betting, let's stay on that topic for just a minute because, well, we finally have an actual date here in Missouri for when legal sports wagering will be available. I've got it for you. But speaking of money, let's stick on that topic of money, like I say, because you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Because there's a lot to keep track of. Multiple bank accounts, your online shopping, you've got multiple accounts that are connected to one or other credit cards. Heck, my wife is famous for sending things to the wrong location. But you know what? This is where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO. We're not talking about just a budgeting app here, by the way, a complete financial command center. Again, tracking all your accounts, all your investments, all your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and let's start building some wealth here, people. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Well, obviously, FanDuel and many others would have liked to have gotten Missouri sports betting started before a football season, and those efforts, unfortunately for a lot of people, have fallen short. And at least the idea was, hey, let's maybe get it going in October, I think, at one point. But The law says it has to start by December 1st of this season, and that sounds like that's exactly when it is going to start in Missouri. So December 1st, 2025, you'll finally be able to legally lay down a little bit of money on the Missouri Tigers over at FanDuel.com. Our long statewide nightmare will finally be over. Now, I will say, with actual legal gambling coming to Missouri sooner rather than later, I do feel a bit of a responsibility to teach some stuff to you about responsible bankroll management out there. Yes, let's do this like the pros. If we're really going to be trying to make some money on this thing and, well, not just have some fun, well, first of all, we should be doing this just to have some fun. If you're doing this to try to make an actual, livable wage, as the popular term is these days on sports gambling, I would strongly and utterly advise you against that. But if we're going to have some good time here, it's funny. I was thinking the other day about an old friend I had who was so risk averse, especially compared to me, a guy who traded futures on the Chicago Board of Trade floor at one point in my life. Well, this person, my old buddy, he would not risk anything on anything, basically. And yet, when he heard that I would bet, keep it to $10, $20 a bet on when I bet on sports back in the day, that type of deal, well, he would make fun of me for my amount of risk that I would take. So the point here, though, is that if you do a small amounts, well, you're always going to stay in the game. And that's the point. Let's make the games more fun, but let's stay in the game. So what you want to do is, I would say, you take the approach of betting a percentage of your bankroll on each and every game. Now, if you want to just say, hey, I'll just bet 1% every time, hey, that's a smart way to go. In other words, maybe you got $100, you want to just bet $1 on every game. Well, that's going to keep you in the game for a long time. But if you want to go 1 through 5, I'm okay with that too. In other words, maybe go as much as 5% of your bankroll on any one game. So if you're really confident on something, and not because you're chasing something, because you're on tilt, because you're angry, you've lost a couple in a row, and you just think, I'll up it to 5% just because I'm trying to make it back. This is where discipline and emotional discipline is so utterly important in this type of endeavor. Again, you got to know yourself here. If you're not capable of this type of thing, well, guess what? Then you shouldn't get an account with FanDuel or anybody else. Maybe they won't like me saying that, but I don't really care. I care more about my listeners than I do, frankly, FanDuel getting a few more bucks here and there off of somebody who really has no business gambling. I'm good at this type of stuff, and good at it in terms of, I win, I think, more often than I don't. But what I'm really getting at here is I'm saying emotionally I'm good at this stuff. It's come see, come saw to me. Hey, $20 here, $20 there, blah, blah, blah. Who really cares? As a guy who has stocks and futures and all kinds of stuff, I'm used to the ebb and flow of money coming and often going out of my various accounts. So if you have that type of attitude, if you have what I'm saying is a big picture attitude, you can look at it as bankroll management and not that every game is my opportunity to strike it rich. I'm telling you, if your attitude is the latter, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose possibly badly in a way that could really cost you something beyond just a few zeros and commas in your bank account. Not that that's not bad enough, but hopefully all of that made some sense here. Just wanted to, throw a dose of reality occasionally on this gambling talk here. It's not all just winning and bonus bets and wine and rainbows and all that good stuff every single day. But hey, thanks for joining me here on the Locked On Mizzou podcast. We are a little bit in off-season mode here, I got to admit, so it's going to be maybe a little bit less frequent, but I promise the quality is going to be there for you. Going to get some good guests on the program, talk Bo Perbula, Sam Horn, Dennis Gates, and the basketball team, which is looking better on paper than I think most Missouri fans are realizing. We'll talk about all that on Locked On Mizzou here this offseason. I'll see you then.